everyone, welcome. This is the Voice of Eve. Our topic today is emergency and trauma care. Please stay tuned with us. We'll soon be back. If you're wondering why we should lose a child with an asthmatic attack, a serious one, in school, and why we should lose a child from choking from blowing a balloon, or why the numerous loss of lives from the bombings and all the accidents, you're actually thinking about emergency medicine. It is about time for us to deliberate on rapid response and trauma care. We have an expert in the house today, and we would enjoy you. Join us as we deliberate on this very sensitive aspect of healthcare. I am Dr. Violet Arene. Welcome back. If you're just joining us for the first time, this is the Voice of Eve. Our topic today is emergency trauma and care, basics for Nigerian families. We are highly delighted to have with us today in the house an expert from diaspora who will explain certain things to us that will help us to stem the unnecessary loss of lives in our midst and to do what we can do. Please join us to welcome a very special Nigerian from diaspora, Dr. Ike Arene. You're welcome.
Oh, thank you very much.
You are a professional and, a practitioner of great repute, and we want to tap from your experience in the field of emergency medicine. We cannot be all doctors, but we believe that maybe you have something for us today to reduce these big concepts to manageable proportions for Nigerian families so we can save lives. First of all, what should we understand as emergency medicine? Please explain to us.
Emergency medicine is the acute care of life-threatening emergencies, which may be illnesses or accidents or both. So in other words, for example, pediatrics will be the care of children who may come in with fever, pneumonia, ear infections. Emergency medicine actually encompasses all those fields when those situations go horribly wrong. So the emergency physician really has to be a jack of all trades, but not just a jack of all trades, but in certain cases, a mini expert in all trades, because a jack of all trades can make mistakes, but in emergency medicine, a mistake will result in loss of life.
Well, thank you so much. But our concern as Voice of Eve is actually the loss of unnecessary losses in families, something due to something like asthmatic attacks, sickle cell, I know family members are not medical doctors, but how can we bridge the gap of not having experts in the family? Is there anything, the family members can do to get help to a dying child or family member before professional help comes?
In the rest of the world, there's something called the golden hour, where a patient who's in a dire emergency and shock, the body recognizes that shock and goes into a protective mode for only an hour. During that hour, the body shunts blood from non-essential organs to the essential organs, which are the brain, the heart, and the lungs. After that hour, the body begins to sense that there is no hope and begins to shut down. So the rest of the world has realized that this golden hour is a time where emergency activation should kick in and then begin to supplement and take over that process. But in the absence of emergency medical response systems, what does a layperson do to save a family member? Because emergency medicine is no respecter of persons. You could, be poor, unemployed, earning minimum wage. You could be a multi-millionaire, but you could be driving home from work and you can be hit by a tractor trailer and be bleeding to death. Well, guess what? You need emergency care, and if it's unavailable, you will die. So we are all in need of this grave service. So since it's not available through health professionals for now, the layperson now has to begin to train themselves to at least offer some kind of basic care to give the patient a chance to get to a hospital where they can then take over that care and then hopefully save the person's life. Now, that basic care is called basic life support, and the foundation is called CPR, or cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation is a big word, but it just means cardio, the heart, pulmonary, the lungs, resuscitation, revive, because the heart and the lungs are really what keeps the body alive. So this information, this education and training is readily available for free anywhere on the internet. You pull it up, 10, 15 minutes training. You train yourself, your sister, your mother, your aunties, your cousin. Let everybody in the home have some type of basic awareness, because I can assure you that when the emergency occurs, you are going to be in a state of shock. You are not going to be thinking. And that's not the time to be open up a manual to find out, well, what do I do?
Yeah.
Or how do I breathe in this person's mouth? How do I push on the chest to resuscitate the heart? How do I pump on the chest to bring out a foreign object my baby swallowed? How do I prevent my baby from having seizures until they stop breathing? That has to be a reflex response based on training. So I encourage you to do that training now before the emergency or trauma occurs. But there are certain situations where certain things can be done at home by the parents or the siblings. For example, if you have a sibling or a parent with diabetes and the person goes into diabetic coma. Diabetic coma means the blood sugar drops so fast that the brain doesn't get any energy supply. So the person goes into a coma. They become lethargic, unresponsive, they begin sweating, they could even have seizures. What you should do then is you have sugar tablets, you have some type of juice around available all the time. Because in that emergency, that's not the time to be looking for some sort of sugar. So if a patient who is diabetic in the home, there should be packs of sugar, packs of juice, anything that has sugary carbohydrate content. That's number one. Also, for the case of where there's an accident and there is massive bleeding, a lot of studies have shown that for bleeding, the best way to stop the bleeding is to apply pressure immediately, sustained pressure. You see, this is why training is important, because when you see a person who is bleeding, you yourself, you're in shock and you're traumatized, you don't know what to do, but apply pressure on the area that's bleeding for 10, 15 minutes, and in most cases, the bleeding will stop or slow down, give you the chance to take the person to a tertiary care institution. So those are two instances where you can help at home. Another case is where a child may be eating a piece of meat, gets distracted, and what we call aspirate, or the meat goes into the lungs, and the child then begins to choke and can't breathe. Now, if the basic life support course will tell you there's something called the finger sweep, where you can stick your finger into the child's mouth in the form of a hook it down into the throat, and hopefully extract the foreign material. If that doesn't work, there's something called the Heimlich maneuver, where you can turn the child over on the stomach and do what's called back thrust. You pump on the back rapidly, and that pressure will stimulate the diaphragm, or the muscle that separates the chest from the abdomen, to push that food bolus out. Those are little basic things that one can do at home. And that situation is where if a child falls and has a fracture deformity to the leg or the arm, you can form makeshift splints. You can get 2 pieces of cardboard, some tape, make a splint to splint the injury. Because not splitting the injury, there's a risk that the bone fragments will cut a blood vessel, cut a nerve or a tendon, make the injury worse. So this is what we call injury stabilization. Those are 3 areas where you can help: choking accidents, diabetic comas, injury stabilization. Those are things that can make a difference in the home.
Dr. Arene, from what you have told us, there is actually an urgency to do more of emergency medicine and environment. But for this bridging, which is so urgent also now, we need to hear from you your closing advice to mothers and maybe to those who can help to accelerate the establishment of greater, better, trauma response. Can we have it from you, some closing advice?
Thank you very much. So emergency care in a nutshell consists of three components. The site of the illness or the site of the injury is one component. The hospital or the tertiary center where the patient receives care is the third component. And in between that is the transportation. So I'll give you an example. For example, if you're in Chicago, in the United States, and you have a heart attack, and your daughter or your wife is beside you, she picks up the phone and calls 911. You have an ambulance team that arrives at your home within 5 minutes, and as soon as they arrive, you have trained personnel who are administering you oxygen. They're giving you medications for the heart attack that will prevent the heart attack from progressing and causing full cardiac arrest. And then they are transporting you to the hospital setting where you can then receive definitive care from a heart doctor. But in Nigeria, for example, you stabilize your loved one at home, the person then needs to go to the hospital. How do you get the person there on time? With the go slow, the traffic, if it takes you 3 hours, the person could be gone in the car. Yeah. And then you are blaming yourself, I saved them at home, and look at what has happened in my vehicle. So transportation is another crucial element. Now, we don't have to have a fully developed emergency response system with, thousands of ambulances roaming the streets. I can give you some examples of what's happening in Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda.
Yes.
There is a company in New York who has developed a software program called Trek Medics. This program, when there's an accident or an emergency, releases a text message through handsets, through phones that are carried by the other individuals.
Yes.
And individuals who are volunteers that are closest to the site of the accident can then respond and then take that person to where they need to go. So there are ways you can improvise, and there are ways you can adapt until a definite solution is in place.
Yes. And do
sisters.
Mothers, sisters.
Because mothers are really the drivers of healthcare. Because what's lacking in healthcare is really not the absence of financial resources, it's the absence of values.
Thank you.
Because if you value a human life, you do whatever is needed to preserve that life.
Thank you, doctor. The absence of value is a problem. Not in all cases do we lack the fund, but we lack the value. The response to the value of human lives is what we need more.
Yes, what we need. We need that the most in every area.
We need it in every area.
Because once you value the life, then you will begin to adopt creative solutions to help those lives. And I will then end with a very brief illustration. This is a personal story. It may sound like fiction, but this actually happened. I finished my training. I was working as an emergency physician in Illinois. I was single at the time, and I had 2 dogs. And in America, when you are at work and your pets are at home, that's frowned on. You actually have daycare centers where you can take your pets, where they play with other dogs, get fed, get water. On your way home, you pick them up and then bring them home. So this particular day, I was running late for work, so I couldn't take them to daycare. I said, well, let me take them with me to work. So I packed some food in the back of my car, put some water, loaded them in the car, drove to work, and left them in the car while working. 4 hours later, I came to check on my dogs, and my dogs were gasping. They were close to death. Because I didn't wind down the windows, they didn't get enough air, so they suffocated. They were close to death. I ran back into the emergency room and told my nurses, my dogs are dying, they're almost dead. My nurse picked up the phone and called 911, called for an ambulance. Within 3 minutes, an ambulance arrived at the emergency. They took my dogs out of the car, put oxygen masks on the dogs, started IVs on the dogs, and rushed them to animal emergency. Unfortunately, my dogs died there because it was too late. And while they were there, the police were called, and the police told me to pay a fine of $200 for each dog for my carelessness, which I paid. But the essence of the story is that even in developed countries, a dog is receiving state-of-the-art emergency care. That's a wake-up call for us to do what's right for our children and families.
You cannot end it any better. I think a word is enough for the wise. If developed countries can care for their dogs, give them emergency response, why not precious Nigerian lives? God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, viewers, just stay on. We end the segment here to take a break. And when we come back, we'll see some discussants to expatiate more on the subject. Welcome back. If you are just joining us for the first time, we've been discussing emergency trauma and care for the Nigerian families. Before we went on the break, we heard from an expert from diaspora, and the content is wonderful. We have two precious ladies here, mothers, who will tell us more about the subject. I have here with me Dr. Nonye Barrow, medical doctor and social and biological mother. You're welcome, ma.
Thank you, ma.
And I have Mrs. Ifeoma Jene, nurse practitioner, biological and social mother. You're very welcome.
Thank you, ma'am.
Well, I just want to tell you a story. Maybe it will help you to tell us what we should do as family members about this matter. On a certain Christmas day, we all went to felicitate with a certain family, and the kids were playing. Somebody gave a 4-year-old a balloon to blow, and they were playing. And the lunch was being set on the table, and the baby blew the balloon and it burst, and a piece went into his trachea, 4-year-old, and he choked before our eyes. That was our Christmas lunch. To me, that was a case of tragedy, of absence of knowledge of emergency trauma response. Dr. Nonye, what can mothers do? What do you have for us about emergency trauma and response in Nigeria?
My advice would generally be to seek knowledge. It's really key that mothers realize that when there are emergency issues in the home, they are usually the first responders. Them or the hired help they have at home.
Yes.
So the mother should seek help, should seek knowledge, and they should also make sure that when they gain this knowledge, they actually pass it on to the hired help who, more of the case than none, would be the ones who would have to deal with these situations when they come up.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Ifeoma Ajene, you're a nurse practitioner. You've come in contact with so many cases. Do you think that mothers and family members, without being medical doctors, could actually do better in emergency response?
Yes, I do. I am of the same opinion like Dr. Barrow, that mothers, house help, drivers, in fact, every lay person should have education, especially in this particular context that you are saying now about the baby swallowing the balloon.
Yes.
Like doctor from diaspora said, if the people there, whether it's the mother or the help, they knew how to sweep the mouth, and the baby would not have choked. In this case, the baby has choked. If they had the knowledge of CPR, child CPR, they start the Heimlich maneuver, put the child head downwards and do it. The child will expel the object, the balloon that is there. So my own is this: education is the key. Education is not limited to the doctors, it's not limited to the nurses, it's just every lay person should be educated on how to take care of first aid and emergency care. We have to have emergency response system all the way.
We have to have, Dr. Barrow, we have to have. What is preventing us from having better emergency care?
I just think it's lack of enforcement of whatever the public health policies are in the country, at least, and of course, in the hospital settings, they're holding hospitals, doctors accountable for the care they offer. It's not really done. So because of that, even when they know that we have emergencies on hand, they don't put their best efforts into it. And in the home, I know that, of course, the parents have the best intention towards their children.
Yes.
So it's not an enforcement of laws or otherwise that would make a difference in the home. It's just a lack of knowledge. It's just a lack of knowledge that they need to actually know.
Yes.
That they need to actually go and seek knowledge of how to take care of their children.
Thank you very much. I believe mothers are listening to us. You're a nurse practitioner. What is your greatest heartache about the lack of emergency care from your practice in Nigeria?
In Nigeria, my own challenges
Yes.
in the medical setting that I've been in
Yes.
is that there is no triaging. You know, we don't know, I don't see any triage here in Nigeria. It's
Please,
like,
what is triage? Can you explain to us, please?
triage is like layman, like a follow-up.
Okay.
Like in a hospital, there's a chain.
Yes.
Okay, when a nurse sees a patient, as well as the nursing assistant, you do your head-to-toe assessment. You do your own intervention before you get to the doctor.
Yeah.
But the nurses, they just, I don't know anything about maternal. I think they do a great job in maternal nursing and childbirth.
Yes.
But in medical, I see them sitting around like, oh, you have to wait for the doctor.
You have to wait for the
You
doctor,
have to
but
wait for the
somebody is
doctor.
dying.
Yes. You don't have to wait for the doctor. You can do your own intervention.
Yes.
If a child is febrile, you know the child, that having that high temperature can lead the child to be, having convulsion. You as a nurse, you take off those clothes and start sponging the child with cool water to bring down the temperature.
Dr. Barrow, I've heard of some ladies, some women, call them ignorant because they don't know any better. If their babies are having convulsions, some of them put the feet of the baby over fire. Now, some ladies also put their baby's head down, especially if they refuse to eat the food, to force the babies to eat, like pap. They put them between the laps, the traditional way, and really pour the pap into the trachea of the kids. Would that not lead to emergency care situation? What if the baby chokes? Another thing is the way of handling convulsions here. It leaves much to be desired. Some women do all sorts of funny things when their child is convulsing. What is the basic emergency care when a child is convulsing?
There's no reason whatsoever to put fire underneath the child or
yes.
to the child's feet.
Yeah.
My advice would be, if the child is convulsing, is already happening, there are causes that will be found out later in the hospital, but you have no control of the situation at the time. So I would advise that the mothers clear the area of anything that the child can fall against to incur even worse injury.
Yes.
As much as possible, make the child, bring the child close to a place where there are soft materials around, so that the child does not hurt themselves.
Wonderful. You don't know, so many ladies are listening now because, as the Bible says, people perish for lack of knowledge. All these tips will help a lot.
I think that there are training, like Dr. Barrow said, that can be offered in the communities. Some of them, will be for free, depending on the target community.
Yes.
And some of them will be, paid for.
Okay.
So I think women should target for such training.
Thank you.
And then Voice of Eve should be an avenue to notify women about this training.
Thank you all, ladies. You've given us a lot of education. Basically, you are telling us women should not be blocked to learning about trauma care. We should open our minds to learning. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, viewers, you have had it all. It's about time we started paying attention to learning more to creatively attend to emergency trauma care. It is a necessity today to save lives for families and for us all. Thank you all for watching. I am Dr. Violet Arene.